The sun beat down hard on the red earth, casting long, wavering shadows across the narrow trail that ran between the pine foothills and the low river. Ahsoka, the wife of a respected Apache warrior, walked alone with a basket strapped to her, back filled with herbs, roots, and water gourds. Her moccasins made no sound as she moved, but her keen eyes scanned the land like a hawk's. That's when she saw the child Dot at first. Ahsoka thought it was a bundle of cloth left in the dirt, but then it moved a slow, shaking shift of shoulders. As she drew closer, she realized it was a little girl, no older than 5 or 6, huddled beside a mesquite bush. Her dress was torn, her boots worn down to nothing, and her pale blonde hair hung in matted tangles. Ahsoka slowed her pace, careful not to frighten the child. The girl didn't even look up at first. She just sat there with her arms around her knees, holding a small doll that was little more than a piece of stitched fabric with no eyes. "Little one?" Ahsoka said gently, her voice soft like a lullaby. "Where is your family?" The girl lifted her head slowly. Her cheeks were dirty, streaked with dried tears, but it was her eyes wide blue, and full of something beyond her years that struck Ahsoka the hardest. I don't have a mama," the girl whispered hoarsely. "Can I stay with you today, ma'am? Just today?" Ahsoka's breath caught in her throat. For a long moment, she said nothing. No child should speak like that, like she already knew kindness was something borrowed, never kept. The Apache woman knelt beside her and placed a gentle hand on the girl's back. "You're hungry?" The child nodded. Ahsoka unwrapped a small corn cake and handed it to her. The girl took it with shaking hands and bit into it slowly, as if afraid it would vanish. Ahsoka didn't press her for more answers. There was time for that later. Right now, the child needed safety and warmth. "My name is Ahsoka," she said softly. "You may walk with me. We're not far from my home." The girl clutched her doll tighter. "Is it okay if I hold your hand?" Ahsoka didn't answer with words. She simply reached out. The small, grimy hand slid into hers, fragile as a sparrow. Together they walked. The Apache village sat in a shallow valley surrounded by cottonwoods and sandstone cliffs. Children ran through the sunlit spaces between lodges, and the scent of roasting meat filled the air. As Ahsoka entered with the strange child at her side, heads turned. It was rare for outsiders, especially white children, to be brought in without warning. Ahsoka ignored the stares. She brought the girl into her own lodge, filled a basin with warm water, and began washing the dirt from the child's face. The girl winced but didn't cry. She sat still, obedient and strangely silent for someone so young. "What is your name?" Ahsoka asked gently. The girl hesitated. "Clara," she finally whispered. "Mama used to call me Clarabelle." "Where is your mother now?" Clara's eyes lowered. She went to sleep under the tree last night. She wouldn't wake up. She was cold." Ahsoka stilled, the cloth frozen in her hand. No wonder the girl had been alone by the road. No wonder she hadn't cried much. She had likely cried everything. She had left the night before. Ahsoka pulled the child gently into her arms. "You are safe now, Clarabelle." Clara leaned into her shoulder, finally letting out a long, trembling breath that sounded more like a sigh than a sob. That night, Ahsoka made a stew of rabbit and squash and let Clara sit beside her by the fire. She braided the girl's hair, sang her a lullaby in Apache, and laid out a soft buffalo hide mat beside her own sleeping space. Clara curled up like a kitten and was asleep in minutes. Ahsoka sat by the fire long after. She stared into the flames. Heart-heavy. She had once known the joy of holding her own child. Years ago, a boy with dark eyes and a cry like thunder had been born in this very lodge. But he had been taken from her by fever before his first winter. And now, here was this girl abandoned, broken, and clinging to a stranger's kindness. Ahsoka didn't know what tomorrow would bring. whether Clara had family, whether someone would come for her. But for this night and for as many days as fate allowed, she would be a mother again. And for the first time in years, the warmth in the fire didn't feel so far away. Morning sunlight filtered through the flap of Ahsoka's lodge, casting warm golden stripes across the packed earth floor. Smoke from the fire pit curled upward, faint and fragrant with the scent of cedar bark. Ahsoka stirred slowly, her eyes going immediately to the little figure sleeping beside her, curled up tight, arms wrapped around the ragged doll. Clara's breath was soft even. For the first time since Ahsoka had brought her home, she looked at peace. Ahsoka didn't move. She sat still for a while, simply watching. Something in her heart, something she thought had long turned to stone, had shifted during the night. She rose quietly and stepped outside to fetch water from the clay jug. As she poured it into the basin, Clara appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes and blinking at the morning light. The oversized tunic Ahsoka had dressed her and hung off her tiny frame, and her hair was tousled like a bird's nest. "Did I sleep too long?" she asked, eyes wide with worry. "You're not mad?" Ahsoka smiled gently. "You slept just right, Clarabelle. Come, wash your face. Then we'll make corn cakes together." The girl's face softened, and for a moment she looked like any other child, safe, loved, and wanted. Later, Ahsoka sat cross-legged with Clara beside her, grinding cornmeal between two stones. Other women passed by and peeked in through the open flap of the lodge. Some wore expressions of concern, others quiet curiosity. But none spoke unkindly. Clara helped roll dough into balls, watching Ahsoka carefully, mimicking her hands. She was quick to learn, too quick in Ahsoka's mind, as if she'd had to grow up faster than she should have. After breakfast, Ahsoka crouched beside Clara with a small clay bowl of crushed berries. She dipped her fingers in and painted faint lines across Clara's cheeks. "This is how Apache children are blessed for good dreams," she explained. Clara giggled softly. "I never had painted cheeks before." "You do now," Ahsoka smiled. "You're special." Clara looked up at her, expression suddenly serious. "Am I allowed to stay one more day? Just one more?" Ahsoka's throat tightened. She placed a hand gently on Clara's shoulder. "You may stay as long as the wind lets you." Later in the afternoon, Ahsoka gently tried again. "Do you remember where your mother was going?" Clara's hands froze where she had been weaving a flower stem through her doll's dress. Her voice dropped. "Mama said we had to leave fast. She said the man was coming back. The one with the red face and leather belt." Ahsoka's eyes narrowed slightly. "Was he your papa?" Clara shook her head. "No. Mama said we should never call him that." "And your name is Clarabelle?" The child blinked. "Mama called me that when she was happy. But I think my name's just Clara now." Ahsoka nodded slowly. There was no last name, no town name, no family to call upon. This girl had been running from something maybe her whole life. When Tall Hawk returned just before dusk, he found his wife tending the fire with the girl beside her, both humming a song. He stepped into the lodge with long, silent strides, the hunting bow slung across his shoulder. His tall figure filled the entrance with shadows. Clara gasped and scurried behind Ahsoka. "It's all right," Ahsoka whispered, rising to meet her husband. Tall Hawk looked from Clara to Ahsoka, his expression unreadable. "Who is this child?" "She was alone by the river trail," Ahsoka said gently. "Her mother is dead. She has no one." He studied her. "You brought her here?" "She asked to stay for one day," Ahsoka replied, holding his gaze. "She is harmless, just a child." Tall Hawk's jaw tightened slightly. "White men will come looking. If she belongs to one of them, they will claim her like property." Ahsoka's voice was quiet but firm. "She is not property. She is a soul, and I believe she was brought to us for a reason." He said nothing at first. Then his gaze shifted to Clara. "What is your name, girl?" Clara peeked out nervously. "Clara, sir." Tall Hawk crouched down to her level. "You may stay, but only for a short while. We do not keep what belongs to others." Clara nodded silently, clutching her doll tighter. That night, as the stars blinked over the open desert sky, Clara curled beside Asuka once again. Her voice, barely audible, whispered through the dark. "If I had a mama again, I'd want her to be like you." Ahsoka wrapped her arms around her and held her close. She didn't say it out loud, but in her heart the words echoed just as clearly. "If I had a daughter again, I'd want her to be you." The wind was soft that morning, rustling the sagebrush and cottonwood leaves like whispers from a distant time. Ahsoka sat outside her lodge with Clara in her lap, braiding the girl's freshly washed hair into two neat plaits. The child's head lolled back sleepily, full from breakfast and still warm from the sun. She looked peaceful, safe Dot, but inside Ahsoka, a storm-brewed Dot. As her hands worked through the child's fine strands of golden hair, her mind traveled backward years, maybe more to a time when her own arms had once cradled another child. A boy, her son. His name had been Nakai, the one who brings light. He had been born in the cold moon of falling leaves during the first frost and had come into the world screaming like a warrior. Ahsoka still remembered the way his tiny fist would wave when he was hungry, the soft coo he made when she sang him the song of river spirits, the smell of sweetgrass clinging to his baby blanket. But that joy had lasted only 10 moons. It started with a cough, then fever, then the terrifying stillness. He had died in her arms before the medicine man could return from the canyon. Ahsoka had wailed to the stars that night, her grief so sharp that the other women of the village wept just to hear it. Since then, she had not sung lullabies. She had not braided small heads of hair, and she had not held a child to her chest, until— "Clara, does it hurt?" Clara asked suddenly, pulling Ahsoka from her thoughts. "What do you mean, little one?" Clara turned around, looking up with her clear, solemn eyes. "When you look at me sometimes, your face gets sad." Ahsoka blinked, surprised. Children weren't supposed to notice such things. She hesitated, then said softly, "I once had a baby too, long ago, but he left the earth early. Sometimes when I look at you, I remember him." Clara was quiet for a long time. Then she reached forward and placed her doll in Ahsoka's lap. "You can hold her. Her name is Miss Peach. She used to be my sister." Ahsoka swallowed the lump in her throat as she gently cradled the doll. Worn and stitched like it had survived more than one childhood. "She's a good listener," Clara added seriously. "You can tell her secrets if you want." Ahsoka smiled, eyes wet. "Thank you, Clarabelle. I will." Later that day, Ahsoka visited her sister-in-law, Nita, who sat under a cottonwood weaving a basket. Clara followed behind, holding Ahsoka's skirt. "She follows you like a chick to its hen," Nita said, raising a brow. "Are you sure this is wise?" "She's a child," Ahsoka answered simply. "She needed someone. I was there." Nita's eyes softened. "And you?" "You needed someone too?" Ahsoka didn't reply. She didn't have to. Her silence said everything. That evening, the wind changed. Smoke signals from a nearby Apache scouting party reached the village. A group of white settlers had passed through the southern valley 2 days ago, 3 men, 2 horses, and a wagon. One of the men had been asking about a lost child, a little blonde girl. When Ahsoka told Tall Hawk, his eyes narrowed. "They will come here next. We don't know that." "She is not ours," he said, his tone firm. "If the men she ran from are dangerous, they may bring rifles. Our people have suffered enough." Ahsoka's hands clenched. "And what would you have me do?" Leave her where I found her? Send her back to men she fears? Tall Hawk didn't answer right away. He looked at his wife, the fierce edge in her voice, the quiet flame in her eyes. You are not thinking with your mind, he said at last. You are thinking with your wounds. Ahsoka turned away, her jaw tight. Then maybe my wounds know something the rest of me has forgotten. That night, Clara sensed the tension. She didn't cry. She simply asked, "Do I have to go now?" "No." Ahsoka whispered, brushing the child's hair back from her forehead. "Not yet. Not until we know what's right." Clara nodded and snuggled closer. "If I had a real mama, I think she'd hold me like this." "You do," Ahsoka whispered. "You have me. At least for now." Outside the lodge, the moon rose, full over the desert. Ahsoka stared at it long into the night, her heart torn in two directions. She had known the ache of losing a child once. Could she survive it again? And if fate had brought Clara into her arms, was it not a sign that some wounds were meant to be reopened so they could finally heal? The following morning brought a stillness over the land, no wind, no rustling trees, just the faint chirp of birds waking with the sun. But that quiet didn't last long. Clara stood outside the lodge, playing with her doll near the corral where two ponies grazed lazily. Her small laughter filled the air, light and unburdened for the first time in days. Inside, Ahsoka ground corn and dried seeds for stew, keeping the child in sight through the open flap. That's when a shadow moved at the edge of the clearing. A rider. No three. The central figure was familiar, broad-shouldered and steady as a stone. Tall Hawk. He rode with the posture of a man who had never known fear, long hair tied in a warrior's knot, a leather bag over one shoulder, and a fresh deer slung across his horse's back. The other two riders, a younger cousin and a scout, dismounted without a word. All three had traveled hard. Clara's smile faded. She stepped back slowly toward the lodge, doll tight in her grip. Ahsoka rose to meet her husband at the doorway. Tall Hawk's gaze swept across her face, then drifted down to the small girl who had taken hold of Ahsoka's hand. "She's still here," he said plainly. "She is," Ahsoka replied, holding her ground. "She belongs here for now." He didn't argue. Not with words. Instead, he stepped inside the lodge and set down his things. Clara stood frozen, her big blue eyes watching his every move. She hadn't forgotten how tall he looked or how serious his voice was the night before. Tall. Hawk sat down cross-legged and looked at her. "Clara," she flinched. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't smile either. But his tone was calm. "I am not your enemy. Do you understand this?" Clara nodded faintly. He leaned forward just slightly. "Were you running from someone?" Clara looked at Ahsoka, unsure. Ahsoka knelt beside her. "It's all right, little one. You can tell him the truth." After a long pause, Clara whispered, "There was a man. He used to visit our house. Mama told me to hide under the bed when he came. Once I heard her scream. After that, we left in the middle of the night." Tall Hawk didn't speak, but the edge of his jaw flexed. "She said we'd be safe if we kept moving. But then she got sick. We ran out of food. She told me to stay close while she rested, but she never woke up." Ahsoka reached for Clara and pulled her close. The child buried her face in the folds of her dress, shaking. Tall Hawk stood slowly and walked to the fire pit. He stirred the embers, letting the silence stretch long and deep. At last, he spoke without turning around. "The man looking for her came to the trader's post near the canyon. A white rancher, angry, loud. He claimed she was his ward. Said the child had run off with her unstable mother." Ahsoka's fingers stiffened around Clara. "Do you believe him?" she asked. "No," Tall Hawk replied. His face was too quick to twist in anger, his fists too scarred for a man who claims to protect children. He finally turned. "He offered gold to anyone who found her. Ahsoka's mouth tightened. She's not for sale. Tall Hawk nodded. That's why I said. Nothing. Clara looked up, trembling. Will he come here? Tall Hawk crouched beside her now, eye level. His face was stern, but not cruel. He might. But this land does not welcome men who take what is not freely given. Clara hesitated, then whispered, Will you protect me? He paused. I will. Protect my people, he said carefully. And you, for now, are under this roof. That makes you ours. That evening, the village held a quiet gathering to discuss what had happened. Some of the elders warned that keeping the girl would invite trouble. Others argued she was too young, too lost to turn away. She was given to us by the wind, said old Shikoba, her voice dry and slow. We do not question why the wind moves. We only know it carries those in need. And that night, Tall Hawk stepped back into the lodge and laid his bow near the door. She may stay, he told Ahsoka. Simply. But we prepare for whatever comes next. Ahsoka wrapped Clara in a woven blanket and tucked her in gently. Clara's voice came out small and sleepy. Did I mess up your life, ma'am? No, little one, Ahsoka whispered, brushing her hair. You reminded me I still have life to give. For the first time since she had been found, Clara woke with a smile. The sun hadn't yet risen above the cliffs, but the air was already warming, and the scents of cedar smoke and sweet corn hung in the lodge. Ahsoka sat by the fire stirring a pot of thick porridge with honey and berries. She turned when she heard the soft patter of little feet and smiled. You're awake early, she said gently. Clara nodded, eyes bright. I didn't have bad dreams last night. Ahsoka's heart swelled. That is good. Your spirit is resting now. The child came closer, eyes wide. Can I help today? I want to do what you do. You may, Ahsoka replied, handing her a small woven spoon. But first, eat. You'll need your strength. After breakfast, Ahsoka wrapped Clara in a soft cotton shawl and took her out into the village. The sky was a flawless blue, and the village was stirring with life, dogs barking, children chasing each other, women hauling buckets of water, or laying out dyed fabrics in the sun. Clara clung to Ahsoka's hand at first, uncertain under the gazes of so many curious eyes. But Ahsoka kept her close and calm. The first stop was the grinding stone, where 3 women were making cornmeal. Ahsoka introduced Clara, and the women, though quiet, greeted her kindly. Want to try? Ahsoka asked. Clara nodded. She crouched next to Ahsoka and pushed the stone back and forth over the corn kernels, giggling as they popped and ground beneath her hands. Her face was dusted white by the end, and she laughed out loud when Ahsoka playfully smeared a stripe on her nose. Afterward, they visited the pony corral, where Tall Hawk was tending to a small paint pony with a braided mane. He glanced over his shoulder as Clara approached. Hesitant. She wishes to learn, Ahsoka said simply. Tall Hawk nodded and motioned her forward. Clara moved slowly, her eyes never leaving the pony's large, gentle face. She held out her hand. Like Ahsoka taught her, the pony nuzzled her palm, and Clara's face lit up with pure wonder. She's soft, she exclaimed. Her name is Sika, Tall Hawk said. She was born during a snowstorm and lived. She is brave. Clara stroked Sika's nose. Like me? Tall Hawk looked at her for a long moment. Then, very quietly, he said, Yes, like you. That afternoon, the women let Clara help string beads onto leather strands for necklaces and moccasins. Her fingers fumbled at first, but she kept trying, her tongue poking out in concentration. Ahsoka watched her with pride in something deeper. Something she hadn't felt in years. Clara was no longer the broken, trembling child who had appeared on the trail. Today, she was a little girl again, playing, laughing, learning, and Ahsoka was being a mother again. They ate lunch under the cottonwoods sharing fresh fruit and cornbread. Clara sat with her legs tucked under her, weaving a tiny braid into her doll's yarn hair. Miss Peach is going to be Apache now, she announced. She likes it here. Ahsoka smiled. Then, we shall make her a dress for the ceremony. What ceremony? We have one every full moon to thank the spirits for what they give. Maybe next time you will dance with us. Clara's eyes lit up. Can I wear beads like yours? Of course, Ahsoka said softly. You'll wear the ones you made. With your own hands. As the sun began to set, Tall Hawk returned to the lodge with fresh meat. He paused at the door, watching Clara asleep with Miss Peach tucked beneath her chin, her face pink from sun and play. She laughs now, he said quietly. Ahsoka stirred the fire and nodded. She remembers what it feels like to be a child. She trusts you. She needs me, Ahsoka answered. And I think I need her too. Tall Hawk said nothing for a moment. Then he sat down beside his wife and said, There is a strength in this girl. You've given her a place to breathe. She's still afraid, Ahsoka whispered. We all are, he replied. That night, as stars blinked above the desert, Clara murmured in her sleep words in a dream voice, soft and sweet, Mama. I found her. Ahsoka closed her eyes.
Resting her hand over Clara's tiny back. Yes, little one.
You found me, and in doing so, you brought me back to life. The desert wind had changed again. Now it blew hot and restless, carrying the scent of dry sage and distant horses. Ahsoka felt it in her bones. Something was coming. She and Clara were walking back from the riverbank with bundles of wild mint and willow bark when they saw the dust trail. It was faint, just a thin thread over the rise, but unmistakable. Riders, and not Apache. Clara stiffened. Someone's coming. Ahsoka narrowed her eyes. Yes, go to the lodge, little one. Stay inside. Clara hesitated, clutching the shawl around her shoulders, then ran silently down the path. Ahsoka remained still, watching the ridge. By the time the first rider appeared, followed by 3 others, word had already spread through the village. Men stepped out of lodges, arrows were strung, and warriors circled like hawks to the edges of the camp. Tall Hawk emerged from the chieftains, lodge bow in hand. The riders slowed, their hands raised, their rifles sheathed. They wore dusty coats and wide hats, and their horses were spooked by the unfamiliar smells of the village. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a red face and a crooked mustache, raised his voice. We're looking for a child. Blonde hair, blue eyes. Might have wandered off near the river a few days back. Ahsoka stepped forward before anyone else could answer. She was found. She's safe. The man's eyes snapped to her. Then bring her out. No, she said flatly, his jaw flexed. Ma'am, she's mine to care for. Her mother was my housekeeper. She ran off with the girl, unfit and sick. The girl's got no one else. She has me, Ahsoka replied. The rancher tried to smile, but it was tight, forced. I'll pay you for the trouble. And for your time, I know how to deal fair. Behind him, one of his men shifted in the saddle and muttered, We should have taken her that night. Ahsoka heard it. So did Tall Hawk. The entire mood of the camp changed in an instant. From the shadows of the cottonwoods, Apache warriors stepped forward with drawn bows. Dogs barked. Women stood tall, children behind them. Ahsoka took one step forward and met the man's gaze. You say the child belongs to you, but I've seen fear in her eyes when she speaks your name. I've seen bruises that never came from falling. You calling me a liar? The rancher snapped, anger rising. I'm calling you unfit, Ahsoka said calmly. She is not a dog to be fetched. She is a child, and she chooses where she feels safe. She's just a half-wild brat, he snarled. You think she's better off in a village full of savages? Tall Hawk stepped forward now, his voice low and lethal. "Speak again, and the desert will silence you." The man glanced around at the bows, the quiet fury in the eyes of every warrior, every mother. He cursed under his breath, then spat in the dirt. "You're making a mistake. That girl don't belong to you." Ahsoka answered without hesitation. "She belongs where she's loved." The rancher's lips twisted, but he turned his horse. Sharply, "You'll hear from the law," he growled. "I'll be back with men who don't ask." "Then you'll leave in a cart, not on a horse." Tall Hawk said. The men rode off without another word. That night, Clara sat curled in Ahsoka's lap, watching the firelight dance along the lodge walls. She had heard everything. She knew who the man was. "He used to yell at Mama," Clara whispered. "Sometimes at me, too. Mama said he wasn't safe, but she needed the money." Ahsoka smoothed the child's hair, her voice a whisper. "He won't come here again, and if he does, he'll regret it." Clara trembled. "Are you mad I didn't tell you sooner?" Ahsoka gently turned the child's face toward her. "Never. You told me when you were ready. That's all I needed." Clara wrapped her arms around Ahsoka's neck, clinging tightly. "Don't let them take me." "They won't," Ahsoka said fiercely, holding her close. "Even if I have to stand between you and the whole world." Outside, Tall Hawk stood watch with 3 warriors near the edge of the village. The stars above were silent, but the fire in Ahsoka's lodge burned like a signal to the heavens. This child was no longer alone. This child was no longer unwanted. And anyone who tried to take her would have to face the strength of a mother's love and the fury of a tribe who had already lost too much. It was just past noon when the shadow fell across the lodge's entrance. Ahsoka was rinsing beads in a clay bowl, and Clara Chenoa, as she was beginning to be called, was lying on her belly nearby, humming softly as she sorted feathers by color. The peaceful rhythm of the day was broken by a slow, deliberate knock on the lodge's wooden frame. Not many people knocked in an Apache village, and none so slowly. Tall Hawk was the first to reach the doorway. The look on his face as he stepped back was enough to make Ahsoka rise immediately, clutching Clara close. Standing there, hands on his hips, was a white man. Wealthy by the look of him, too clean for a trail rider. Hat trimmed with silver, boots polished. His eyes were pale, cold, and calculating like a man used to getting exactly what he came for. "I've come for my daughter," he said without greeting. Ahs okay. They placed herself in front of Clara, who had gone deathly still. "I don't know who you are," Ahsoka said evenly, "but she is not your daughter." "She is," he replied with calm arrogance. "Her name's Clara Jang. Her mother, my housemaid, ran off. Took her with her. Died from fever near the border. But the girl's mine by law." Ahsoka's stomach turned. So this was him. The man who let Clara's mother die. The one who thought of her only as property. "She came to us," Ahsoka said. "Hungry, alone, afraid. She asked to stay." "That wasn't her choice to make," he said, stepping forward. "She's 5. I'm her blood." Tall Hawk moved to block him, voice low and sharp. "She is under our care now." "She's a white girl living in an Apache camp," the man said with a smirk. "You think any judge in this territory will let that stand? I've already spoken to the sheriff. The marshal will be here soon." Ahsoka felt a flicker of fear, but she didn't flinch. "Then let the law come. But until it does, she stays. She's safe here." Behind her, Clara clung to Ahsoka's skirt, whispering the words over and over. "I don't want to go. Please don't make me go." The man's face twisted. "You think you're doing right by her? You don't know the world. That girl needs education, civilization. You'll raise her to be wild, dirty." "She needs love," Ahsoka snapped. "Not fences and cold houses." Not orders barked like she's a servant. She needs family. She has family, me. You're not family. Tall Hawk growled. You're a jailer. She was escaping. The man stepped back, adjusting his collar. You people don't understand ownership. We understand children aren't cattle, Ahsoka said fiercely. His lips curled into a sneer. You'll regret this. The law will come down on you. And when they do, I'll be waiting with a wagon and a whip if I have to. Then, without another word, he turned on his heel and strode away. When he was gone, Clara was still shaking. Ahsoka knelt down, took her into her arms, and held her. Until her breathing slowed. You won't let him take me? She asked in a voice barely above a whisper. No, Ahsoka said. Even if I must stand alone, I will not let you go. But as she looked to Tallhawk, who stared after the man's departing figure, she knew something had shifted. They would not be left in peace now. That night, the village held quiet council. Word of the man's visit spread quickly. The elders gathered. So did the women. Some were worried. Others were angry. Once the law gets involved, one elder said, it may not matter what is right, only what is written. She's one of us now, said another. If they want her, they'll have to come through all of us. And though no decisions were made yet, a fire had been lit, not of violence, dot of protection. Later, as Clara lay in Ahsoka's arms by the fire, she whispered, I was scared when I saw him. I felt like I disappeared inside. Ahsoka kissed her temple. You are here. You are seen. You are real, and you are loved. Clara looked up at her. Even if they come? Especially if they come. Outside, a wind stirred the trees. The storm hadn't come yet. But it would dot, and Ahsoka was ready to meet it. The morning. After the confrontation, the village was quieter than usual, not with fear, but with thought. The rancher's threats still hung in the air like dust after a stampede. Though he had left, everyone knew men like him didn't go far, not when their pride had been challenged by a woman, and especially not when they'd been denied something they believed they owned. Clara stayed close to Ahsoka, barely a few paces away, even as she played with other children. She didn't ask to go riding. She didn't ask to bead. She was watching, listening, waiting to see if her new life was already slipping away. Ahsoka saw it all. The tension in the girl's shoulders, the tight clutch on the doll, the silence. That had returned, and Ahsoka knew she couldn't protect Clara alone, not forever. Not against the law. Not against the world outside. So that evening, she called the women. They gathered in the elders' circle just after sunset, dozens of them. Mothers, widows, sisters, daughters. Nita came with her infant on her hip. Elder Shikoba arrived last, with two younger women steadying her arms. The fire crackled at the center, its sparks rising like silent prayers into the darkening sky. Clara sat quietly beside Ahsoka, leaning into her warmth. Ahsoka Rose, she came to me asking for one day. Ahsoka began, her voice calm but firm. One day turned into many. Now she asks me nothing, but watches, waiting for the moment I tell her it's time to leave. The women listened, faces unreadable, patient and still. I have told my husband I will not give her back to the one who caused her pain. I would rather go into exile than send her to harm, but I need more than my own heart to protect her. I need yours. There was a pause, then Nita stood. This girl eats with us, laughs with our children, learns our words. She is already part of us. Another woman added, a child is not white or Apache. A child is only what love makes her. Shikoba raised her wrinkled hand, and silence fell like a blanket. The wind carried her to us, the old woman said. And the wind is never wrong. She is not blood, one woman said hesitantly. If the law comes, will they see her as one of us? Shikoba met her gaze. Then we must make her ours by our ways, not theirs." There was a murmur of agreement, and Ahsoka's chest tightened with quiet gratitude. That night, the tribal council was called. Not just the women, but the warriors, the elders, the leaders of every family. Tall Hawk stood beside Ahsoka as she presented Clara to the circle. The firelight flickered over the girl's face, and though she clung to Ahsoka's side, she stood. Taller than she ever had. "She came to us with no name, no home, and no protector," Ahsoka said. "Now I ask, can this village give her a name, a home, and a family?" There was silence. Then Shakoba rose once more, her old bones creaking, her voice clear as ever. "She shall be known as Chenoa, the dove, not because she is fragile, but because she flew alone through the storm and found her nest." Murmurs of approval rippled through the circle. Tall Hawk stepped forward. "I will teach her as I would a daughter. She will learn to ride, to hunt, and to speak with strength. And I will raise her as my own," Ahsoka added, voice breaking slightly. "For the child I lost, and the child the world tried to throw away." One by one, hands were raised in agreement. The council had spoken. That night, a small ceremony was held beneath the stars. Ahsoka wrapped Clara Chenoa in a new shawl hand-woven in the colors of the tribe. Feathers were braided into her hair. Her hands were painted with red ochre, a symbol of protection and renewal. The village women danced in a circle around her, singing the old songs, the ones that welcomed new life, that honored the broken and made them whole again. Clara stood at the center. Cheeks glowing, eyes wide, tears quietly falling, not from fear, but from something she had never known before, belonging. Later, as the fire burned low, she climbed into Ahsoka's lap and whispered, "Is it okay if I stop being afraid now?" Ahsoka kissed the crown of her head and wrapped her arms around her. "Yes, Chenoa, you're home now. The wind has stopped." And for the first time in her short, painful life, the girl finally believed it. The calm that had settled over the village in the days following Chenoa's naming did not last long. By the third morning, the dogs barked before dawn. The warriors were already awake. Something in the air had shifted again. Ahsoka emerged from the lodge with her shawl clutched around her shoulders. Chenoa was still sleeping inside. Curled against the furs with the doll, she now refused to part with. Tall Hawk met Ahsoka by the fire circle. His face was grim. "5 riders," he said, "2 wear the star. The U.S. Marshal's badge. Lawmen. They've brought paper this time," he added. "Words they think weigh more than blood." The marshals stopped at the edge of the village, staying atop their horses. Their uniforms were dusty, boots scuffed, but their eyes sharp. One of them, older with graying whiskers, held a document high. "We come under the order of Judge Harland in Prescott," he called. "We're looking for a child white female around 5 years old. Her guardian claims she's been taken by force or deception." Tall Hawk didn't move. "No one here has taken anything." The other marshal, younger and colder, pointed toward the lodges. "We've had reports she's here, that she's been adopted into your people. But that's not how the law works." Ahsoka stepped forward. "She was not taken. She came. She asked to stay. She had bruises we did not give her. She cried in her sleep." The older marshal frowned but didn't lower the document. "The court don't care much about bruises, only blood." "She has blood," Ahsoka said, "and heart, and spirit. And all of it is safer here than wherever you'd send her." "We don't get to choose safe," the younger one snapped. "We get to follow the law." Clara had emerged by then, barefoot, hair messy, her tiny body stiff with fear. She looked between the marshals and Ahsoka, lips trembling. "I don't want to go," she said softly. "Please don't let them take me." The older marshal saw the fear in her face. Something in him shifted, but not enough. He lowered his voice. "Ma'am, I can see she cares for you. I believe you've done right by her. But if we walk away without that child, we're out of a job and you'll be charged with abduction. That's prison for both of you." Ahsoka's hand reached for Chenoa's shoulder. "Then let me ask her in front of all of you what she wants, not what you want, not what the law says." The council was forming behind them. More Apache gathered. Silent, proud, unbending. Ahsoka knelt. "Chenoa, they say you don't belong here, that they can take you away, but you are not a sack of corn to be carried off. So I ask you not as your mother, but as someone who loves you, what do you want?" Chenoa wiped her nose with the back of her hand. She turned and looked at the marshals. "I want to stay. I want to stay with Mama." Ahsoka broke at that, but stood tall. "There. That's the truth." The younger marshal swore under his breath, dismounting. "I'm not here for a debate. I'm here to enforce a court order." He stepped forward straight into a wall of warriors. Tall Hawk at the front, arms crossed, bow unstrung but at the ready. The older marshal didn't move. His eyes searched. Ahsoka's, then Clara's, then the crowd behind her. Finally, he sighed. "We don't have the force to take her by fight. And frankly, I don't think I'd sleep well if we did. But this isn't over." He turned to the younger man. "Mount up. Let's go." "They want to raise her?" "Let them answer to a higher judge next time." The marshals rode off. No one cheered. But something stronger filled the silence. Unity. A line had been drawn and the people had stood together on one side of it with a child at the center. That night, Ahsoka held Clara tightly in their lodge. "They may come again," she whispered. "Will we be ready?" Clara asked. Ahsoka smiled. "We already are." Clara closed her eyes. "I don't want to be anyone's thing again." "You never were," Ahsoka said gently. "You're not a thing. You're Chenoa. You're ours." And as the fire crackled beside them, the child slept not in fear, but in peace. For the very first time, weeks passed since the marshals rode away. No court papers came. No lawman returned. The stranger who claimed Clara as his daughter must have known that if he came back, he wouldn't leave with anything but regret. The Apache village stood united, its lines drawn clear and firm. But Ahsoka knew this peace wasn't guaranteed, not forever. So she prepared not just for battle, but for life. For Chenoa's life. A ceremony was held beneath the ancient pine near the sacred spring. It was a naming rite, one the elders called for, with Ahsoka at the center, not just as witness, but as mother. Chenoa wore a new buckskin dress sewn by the village women, decorated with beads and feathers she had helped collect. Her hair had been combed and braided by Ahsoka's own hands. Her eyes shimmered with excitement, though she barely understood the depth of what was happening. The people gathered in a wide circle. The shaman stepped forward, painted in earth tones, voice strong. "We do not take children by force. We welcome them by heart," he said. This child came with no family, but she found one. Ahsoka knelt beside her. "You came to me as Clara, and I will never forget the little girl who whispered that she had no mama. But today, we give you the name you were always meant to have." The shaman placed a hand on the child's head. "She is Chenoa White Dove, a spirit of peace, though born in hardship. A symbol of beginning again." The people echoed the name, Chenoa, Chenoa. Tears streamed down Ahsoka's cheeks. Clara, now Chenoa, looked up at her and whispered, "Do I really belong?" "Now?" Ahsoka pulled her close. "You always did." That evening, after the sun dipped behind the hills and the drums faded into night, Ahsoka sat by the fire with Chenoa curled against her. "Will they ever come for me again?" the little girl asked. "They might," Ahsoka said honestly. "The world beyond the trees is loud and blind. It doesn't always see who people are, only what they're supposed to be. Chenoa looked up at her. What am I? You, Ahsoka said, stroking her braid, are a girl of fire and feather. You are brave. You are loved. And no matter who comes knocking, you are mine. The child closed her eyes, and for the first time since that cold morning when she stumbled into the village with nothing but a torn dress and a whispered plea, she didn't dream of running. She dreamed of growing. Years would pass. And in time, the world would change. The borders between nations and tribes would blur. Schools would open. Roads would be built. The old ways would bend but not break. And in one corner of the land, a woman named Chenoa would grow tall and wise. She would speak many languages: Apache, English, Spanish. She would teach other children who were lost, just as she had been. And whenever someone asked her who raised her, she would smile gently and say, "My mama found me the day I asked to stay. And she never let me go."